Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Ogogwa Osiobu. I'm a consultant physician geriatrician here at the National Hospital Abuja, and I also happen to coordinate Lassa fever infection control for the hospital. We are all aware of the fact that Lassa fever has been with us for more than 50 years in Nigeria. And we tend to get it seasonally. It's almost a given that every year we would get cases of Lassa fever, particularly in areas like Edo, Nasarawa, Ebonyi, the FCT. But really, we are recording cases all over the country now because of a heightened awareness. It's very important that we don't lose sight of the concerns regarding Lassa fever while grappling with COVID-19, as we're doing right now globally. But Lassa fever is here with us in Nigeria and is still a major issue. The case fatality rate for Lassa fever went as high as 23% in this period last year in 2019. What does that mean? It means out of 100 cases that were confirmed, 23 people died. If we contrast that to COVID-19, where we say the case fatality rate is about 2 to 3%, that means out of 100 cases, only 2 or 3 people die. So you can see that in that regards, COVID-19 would not look as fatal or as serious as Lassa fever is. Very important though that yes, COVID-19 is global. It's been described as it's a pandemic that we're dealing with now. So there's a lot of information regarding COVID-19 and necessarily so that we all know what to do. But we don't want to lose sight of what we have to deal with locally, which is the Lassa fever infection. Lassa fever could be prevented if we imbibe certain practices, avoiding contact with the rodent that tends to be the reservoir of the virus. So those of us who live around bushes that are being burnt and having the rats being displaced from their natural habitat, we need to be careful how we protect our water, drinking water, our food, our cooking utensils. Must be well protected from contact with the rats. When the rats come into our homes and deposit their excreta or urine on our food, or drinking water, or cooking utensils, then we're at risk of acquiring Lassa fever infection. The same way, keeping our home environment clean, making sure in our rooms there is no clutter that would be a hiding place for the rats. Making sure that we wash our hands, making sure that our cooking utensils and our plates, cups are all very clean before we use them in eating, so that we're not at risk of acquiring the Lassa fever virus. When we go to buy our food, particularly gari. So we've seen when we travel along to Benue, we see people drying gari along on the bare floor. This can be a good playground for the rats. If such gari is not well fried and adequate heat applied, then one is at risk of acquiring the virus. So if you bring such gari and just put it in your plate and soak it and drink, you're at very high risk. But if you make such gari into eba, where you've used very hot water, very likely that the virus, if it really existed there, would have been killed, because we know that the virus is inactivated by heat. For the 2019 season at the National Hospital, we had 23 suspected cases, and only one was positive of those 23 suspected cases. So far in 2020, we've had 3 suspected cases and all of them are negative so far. So it's really important that healthcare workers have a good index of suspicion. The first things we'll think about when we have anyone who has fever, headaches, malaria, or what we call generalized body aches, will be malaria, yes, which is a more commoner cause of fever in this environment. But if such an individual is not improving and they have other things, especially where they have some fullness in the chest, some edema around the face, some irritation in the throat, they're coughing, we also have to think about Lassa fever, particularly when we're in that season between about August, September to April. So a high index of suspicion. There's also a good inroad that we've made so far through the NCDC, where we now have a reference lab in Abuja. So you get a suspect case, you isolate such a patient because you want to reduce the number of healthcare workers in the system who come across such an individual. We also separate the equipment that we use for such an individual. We have an isolation area where we typically will keep them. We involve the epidemiologist for the state, who would help us with collecting sample for testing. And usually within 24 to 48 hours, we have results. Lassa fever is one of those viral hemorrhagic fevers that has a known treatment. So if we start treatment early, people can be cured. And so once we suspect a case, we isolate, we start treatment. And the drug of choice is called ribavirin, so that if the test result comes back and is positive, you've already given such an individual 2 days of early onset treatment, rather than wait till the results come back before. So, and if the result's negative, then you take the individual out of isolation, stop the treatment, and look for other reasons why they might be sick.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
See it.